All right, we're all set. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome to a special meeting of the Richland School Board of Directors. We have a special meeting tonight, starting with interviews that we are doing for the superintendent search firm proposals that we received. And we will start with the Northwest Leadership Associates Group.
Okay, thank you. I was told to be brief, might be a challenge. A retired superintendent, but I'll give it my best. I do want you to know that as we go through this, one of the things that we've taken pride with Northwest Leadership, and I've been with, helped take over the company about 6 years ago, Dr. Dennis Ray, who has been a longtime educator in the state. He used to run this, and then I started helping him when there are health problems. And we have really been busy the last 5 or 6 years. These are the searches that we did here this past academic year. And we feel that we're a very well trusted organization and search group in the state. We've been around for 26 years. We've completed 420 searches. We actually completed another one just yesterday in the mid part of the state. One of the things to take pride with and that we've been working on quite a bit in the last few years is we have I want you to know we have a search process, but it's very flexible. And that means that when we sign up with the school district, we're not going to be telling you everything to do. We have all of the processes put together, but some parts of it might be stretched, some might be condensed. We do have school districts that like to drop certain pieces of it, but we'll bring the whole comprehensive package to you, and then we can work through what pieces and how you want to go through those different pieces with the search. We do have about 18 or 19 people that work for us. We have 15 that are engaged in searches. We have other people that do strategic planning, coaching, and things like this. But we do have all of our employees or our consultants are people that were in good stead when they left their position. They have a lot of good history with them, and they're very well connected. Of the 15 people, we have people in different corners of the state so that we know are connected with school districts across the state. We have 2 or 3 people in the Spokane or the east side down in Walla Walla area. We have a couple of people that live in the region here. And then on the other side of the state, the northwest part of the state, the southwest part of the state. We have a little more than 200 years of combined superintendent experience. And this is important to us because we want people that understand both sides of working with the board, as well as what the position entails and what it takes to be in this position. Every consultant, one of the things you're going to hear me say is that all of us work together. Joel and I will be working, Joanna and I will be working together as co-consultants on this. We have, all of our searches have 2 people that work in tandem, and that is so that nothing happens if one person, if something comes up. We want to make sure that the search stays on an even flow. We have, one of the things that we do brag about is we have a very comprehensive regional and national pool. We have our constant contact is who we use to send out nationwide the postings, and we have about 3,500 different individuals, schools, education schools, and then we're tied into quite a few of the administrative organizations in different states. And we have worked with districts from 50 up to a little more than 23,000. Last couple, 3 searches that I've been involved in, Central Valley, Bethel, and Puyallup. And you guys would fall in that classification. as far as one of the larger, mid to large school districts in the state. And then another piece that we try to do is, or not try to do, we do, is we have a comprehensive 2-year guarantee. And this is if something happens that either you have to get rid of the superintendent or the superintendent leaves or whatever, we come back and do the search. We don't charge fees for that to make sure that everything works out. We haven't had to exercise this guarantee. Probably that's why we keep putting it in there, but we haven't had to exercise this yet. I have 41 years of educational experience here in the state of Washington. I was superintendent Meade and Pullman School District. And then for about 18 years, I was an adjunct professor with WSU, taught school finance. And then Joel Ani, he has 42 years. He's actually older than I am, but he has 42 years of experience in the state of Washington. He was the executive director of WASA for several years. And then he was also superintendent of Snoqualmie Valley and in Colfax. Now, the meat, and I know I've got just a couple minutes here, but the meat of what we do is in the search process. And we continue to refine this, but we have a four-step process. And the first one is the discovery and prepare. When we come into the district, we start by surveying focus groups, individual focus groups, community groups. We start assembling information. We have surveys that go out. The surveys that we provide that can be modified somewhat have a fairly healthy section of qualitative information or quantitative information. The real meat to it is with the qualitative. Those comments are anonymous, and those are turned over to you so that you can read those comments from individual people. And we do a fairly good job, people do, getting involved with the survey part. Focus groups, when I talk about them, that's with your administrative pools, with your associations, individuals with the individual interviews with the board members. Take all that information, put it together, and what we do is come up with a profile. And that profile has the strengths of the district, what there is to offer. It's the selling piece to the candidates when we go out. And then it also has the descriptions of what you're looking for, those characteristics, both professional characteristics and personal characteristics in the person that you would hire. From there, the recruiting and screening, we think that we do this very well. We have several different databases that we work with. Each one of us, of the 15 people, keep our own database that, like for myself, I keep about 250 people on mine, but we share that information as much as possible. When a job comes open, we talk amongst ourselves and start identifying people that may be the ones that we actively go after. And when we do recruit, we are very active and aggressive in what we do. We go after people. We just don't put the advertisement up. Then we interview and select. We have all the processes. One of the things we'll do is be sharing with you all of the different forms and all the different scheduling and those things that would go around that interview process, questioning strategies, protocols, and things like that. And then that would be for us as a group to modify, change that however you want that structured. And then the transition piece we do during the work that we do, we'll be bringing you salary surveys for comparisons. We'll work with you on negotiating the contract with the candidates. One of the things we like to do is have that, after you get through the preliminaries, you have 3 or 4 people that you are looking at for the finals. We like to have the contract pre-negotiated so that we don't have somebody that after they're selected wants to hold out or ask for more. We try and keep that level with all the candidates. the question is why would you go with Northwest Leadership? Well, we really think that we have a proven process that's well structured. It is flexible, but it's very comprehensive in making sure you get to that final step, and that's hiring the person that you think is the best fit, the best person for this particular position. We do have the people, like I say, I'm very pleased with the connections that I have with all of our consultants. They have a tremendous amount of information and knowledge on individuals, candidates that we would bring forward, and we're indebted, or we're in debt too on this. We want to make sure that we bring you candidates that aren't of any consequence as far as any issues that they have, where they're at or where they're coming from. And we put a lot of time and effort into this particular piece. The candidate pools, again, as we go through this is the number one, I think, strength that we have is a large amount of people that we can go to, the connections to find people that would best fit or be of a best fit for the school district. And then we have the organizational capacity. We have our own people that do our internal work for us on all of our brochures and our postings, and then the maintenance of our websites and all of the other particular pieces that go with the organization to make sure that we stay together, that we have a good process and it moves forward. So that's it. 5 minutes.
Anyone on the board have a question?
I had one question for you. I would imagine that this search would be on the longer end of ones you've worked with before. The timeline is a little bit longer. So how could we use that to our advantage here?
Well, for me, when I do searches, when I lead them, and like I say, we have individual consultants to do this, but I am always try to pressure the board a little bit to not do this too fast. And the reason is that February, end of February time to have it completed, that's a good time. And most of it has to do with giving the candidates time to work this through with their families or with people that are with them in their lives over the breaks, because there's quite a bit of information that we'll be asking from them. But it's where the candidates are in their job at the time. And believe it or not, a lot of times they get the evaluation, and it's a good evaluation, and they say, hey, I can use this to move on. And that happens in January for most all the superintendents, or else they can get a bad evaluation and say, hey, it's time to move on, kind of the same thing. But I really think that our best candidate pools, they come if you try and post this for, I'm a person to say post it for 10 to 12 weeks. It isn't going to hurt anything. You need to understand what we consider a premier school district. This is going to be one that's sought after regionally and statewide. I don't think there's going to be any issues with that. And if you want to advertise nationally, you'll draw quite a few people there too. So I say stretch it out a little bit, mid to end of February to make it. That still has a candidate that you've hired that's still has 3 or 4 months or more before they come on the job, and that helps them transition. We used to not start these searches seriously until January, February. There's been a big shift over the last few years to get started a little bit earlier, get the posting out there, and then have more time to talk and search candidates out. You're welcome.
Other questions? One question I had, so I know your sort of second stage is developing the profile
Right.
of the candidate. Is that used to develop the job description, or is that used mostly to screen and recruit candidates?
Actually, that's for everything. That's what we kind of say is our centerpiece. Once we develop the profile, and that profile is put into the brochure, that's our guiding light, and yours is to match the candidates with it. And a for instance in that is I've had a couple school districts, they've had financial problems, not so much on the learning side of things, but the financial problems. So they pushed it or had a little more on the professional experience, training. They wanted somebody that had more finance background. Characteristics, on the candidate side of this, it's interesting because there are some people that say this might be too much for me, because if you're looking for somebody that's outgoing, somebody that gets out and connects with the community, and there are people that they look at jobs that don't require them to leave the office so much, or they have other people that do that kind of work, so that when we develop that profile that goes into the brochure, it also works as that's what we're going to search for, is what you said that you wanted in those characteristics, professional experience, whatever else it may be, and those personal items too that you have in there. And using that clear to the end, like, in other words, when we get down to the finals, is this person matching what we asked for at the first? And go a little bit further here. When I worked with the Bethel School District 2 years ago, it actually took us 2 years to do that search. They got down to the end and they weren't sure that that was the person that was going to match. So we got an interim in and then finished the search the next year.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So you mentioned something, and I was going through your proposal. Where all do you advertise? Do you advertise out of state? Do you advertise regionally within the price?
Right. Anymore, I would claim, since everything's online, for instance, I get several hundred people a month that ask to be on our list. We have it on our website, so they know where to come. But we try to advertise that when I say national, you usually go to AASA. That's the best place to go to do that. But Wallace, which is the Washington Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, we give our information to them, and then those are passed through their sister organizations also. And so one of the things that you'll need to decide is, do you want somebody from out of state, or are you wanting somebody regionally? Are you comfortable with that? Washington's one of the most litigious states in the country, and the laws and the RCWs and WACs and everything else. Would it be better for you where you're at to have somebody that knows the state better, knows how the funding works? And there is quite a bit of difference in the funding across the United States, but it doesn't mean that you can't find good quality candidates there.
You've done quite a few searches as of late. What's your pool been like?
The pools in a district this size are probably going to be 25, right around 25. I got to watch what I'm saying here. I'm not so worried about the size of the pool. It's the highly qualified people that are in that pool. And I think that you'll probably get 10 to 15 people that can do the job. And they're going to be 10, 12 people that are ones that they have experience. They've been through issues. They've got the training and everything else. But the pools got down to about 10 to 12 a few years back for a run. But I think we had 23 all up this year. We did have 23, same amount in Bethel. So it kind of depends on where you're at, but I'm not expecting any issues here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to the second one. Okay. Oh. Yeah, thank you.
I am wounded, all right? Like turning 60 and everything's falling apart. That's because I busted move.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Make sure I set my timer here for you so I don't get overly excited and forget to stop. Thank you for having me here to present on behalf of McPherson and Jacobson. My name is Heidi Sipe. I'm the superintendent of the Umatilla School District. However, I have been consulting for McPherson and Jacobson since 2022. The reason for that is quite simple. I've been a superintendent for a very long time. I recognize Shelley from her time in Oregon. And this is my 20th year as the superintendent of Umatilla. I did have a 1-year leave of absence to go be an assistant superintendent for the State Department of Education. However, I was just on loan for that period of time. And the thing that I found in years of mentoring new superintendents is that people often are in the wrong place. And I started to recognize how much disruption that caused in communities, how much impact it had on schools. And so in addition to mentoring, which I still do, I started doing the searches. And I've really found that to be a very meaningful use of my time. I'm very passionate about education. I use my vacation leave to do this because I think it's worthwhile. And my partner for this search would be Mike Scott. He's a retired superintendent from Hillsborough, and his journey is very similar to mine. We just genuinely care. We want to see districts succeed. We want to see students succeed. We want to see superintendents and school boards succeed. And so finding that right fit is really essential to making that happen. And that's why we do this. One of the things that is unique about our partnership is that I still work extensively with AASA, and I am a mentor for both the Aspiring Superintendents Academy with AASA as well as the Aspiring Female Superintendents Academy with AASA. Mike, in his retirement, has started serving as a paid mentor for a number of new superintendents. So between the two of us, we have a lot of reach to a variety of candidates, as well as we know the aspiring superintendents, we know the sitting superintendents. And I also have that national reach. Mike has more of a Pacific Northwest reach. However, both of those are a good balance to each other. I know that this is the most important decision you're going to make. That's just what it comes down to. Board leadership, superintendent leadership cannot happen in isolation, and it really takes a strong partnership between everyone to help the district succeed, and getting it right is crucial. So as we're talking through the process, if we're selected, we're going to spend quite a bit of time with you, and we want to make sure that we understand who you are, what you want, and that we're doing our very best to bring you candidates that we see reflect your values. The very first part that we focus a lot on is really identifying your needs and making sure we understand where the district is and where you want to take it. Then we start working on our candidate pools. Between Mike and I, as well as the home office, we have a pretty extensive opportunity there. McPherson and Jacobson's done over 1,500 searches since its inception, and we also have a very large database, as does every search firm. Like, everyone can come up here and tell you they have this huge database. That's true for us too. But the reality is, where it really comes down to importance is once we understand who you're looking for, then we also start saying we need the candidates who had these specific skills or these specific experiences. And that's where we customize it, and then we start reaching out to people. And then it's our job to make sure that we're bringing you candidates that we can put our name behind, because we know you're about to put your name behind them. And that's a lot of pressure. So thankfully, I had a surprise library media endorsement that I had to add my senior year of college. And I cannot tell you how handy that has been in this role, because I search and I make sure that I have found every single article that I can possibly find on these candidates for you. Doesn't mean someone's going to be ruled out necessarily, but it will mean that you're not going to be blindsided, and that's important. Moving forward, we spend a lot of time with not only you, but with your broader community. So if selected, we're going to really spend a lot of time making sure that that stakeholder engagement is done and that it's done well, and that you have a lot of feedback from your stakeholders so that as you're moving forward, you're confident in what you're looking for, and it's our job to help you with that. The other piece we're going to do is make sure that there's multi-phases to that recruitment process. So we're going to spread a really broad net first, and then we're going to start filtering that through. We aren't going, you can always see every single person who's applied if you'd like, that's never an issue, but we're going to break it down into why we are recommending this smaller group. We'll call it a short list. And then your shortlist candidates will work with you on to get to your finalists. And then of course your finalists are those you'll interview. That process is pretty involved, but it's the stuff that we're doing for you. And if you ever want to see how the sausage is made, of course, we'll walk you through each of those decisions on every single candidate. But in reality, it's our job to really filter a lot of people that we don't think are a good fit for you out. This is going to be essential, and this is where we need a lot of help from you, because the search is going to be as good as your board alignment. And so if you can unite around the exact qualities that you need, if you are united around your vision, one of the things I found is you have a great variety of board experience, which is actually a really awesome asset. In my role, I have worked for 16 different school board members during my tenure as a superintendent, but I've only ever worked for one school board. I've always had really united boards with very different opinions, but when they come together to make a final decision, they're going to have it out for a while, and then they're going to stand behind that decision. If that's something that you are willing to do in this process, it's going to lead to a better outcome. And then we have to make sure that we're not doing this work in a silo. You have to have community engagement, and it's our job to make sure that you're confident and that you're feeling like you're representing your constituents well. This is us. I already talked about us. The only thing that I did get from Mike when I said, is there anything you want to emphasize? He did want to make sure you knew that he was once second place in the Pinewood Derby race. I think he really didn't want me to say that, but if he joked with me, you have to hear his bad joke. He was a third grader. In reality, Mike has retired just a few years ago. He was superintendent of the Hillsborough School District, about 19,000 students in that district. My district is tiny. I'm just across the river, and we're just about 1,500 students. The beauty of that balance comes again, I have more regional experience for here than Mike has. Mike has more larger district experience than I have. And so that balance, again, is really important. And I think it's one of the things that makes us a good fit. Mike and I have worked together for a very long time, long before we both started consulting, but we did it both in the same year, 2022. And yes, I am going to use that picture. It is my, like, you know, when you see somebody who has like a real estate sign and it's the same photo for about 20 years, I'm riding that one until I retire. In reality, I'm just too cheap to get another one. We are in every state nearly doing searches. But the thing that really makes us unique and that we're really proud of, we have the exact stats if you want them, they round up in each of these. But the thing we're really proudest of is the longevity. We know how much energy goes into a superintendent search, not just for you, but for the community, for the students, for the staff. And that can have an impact on staff morale and staff turnover as well. And so we want to make sure that the people that are selected are going to represent you into your future. And we have really good success with that. So far, each of the searches that Mike and I and my partner, Doug Nelson, is another person I work with frequently, All of our people are still there in the roles, and that's really important to us. We do offer a guarantee if they aren't there for the 2 full years. We haven't had to execute that. I was once nervous that we would, but we did not. They worked together. And the reason that they worked it out and worked together is because we still continue to mentor and support those people. So if someone has been hired by our team, they get to keep our numbers handy for a very long time, as does the board chair. And so then if there's something going awry that we may need to help facilitate and get those conversations taken care of so that you can continue to experience success, we do that. We've already talked at length about this, but the key is going to come down to, it really is a lot of making sure that things are refined first, then it goes down to the filter, then it goes down to the selection. Phase 1, we will have a meeting with you to make sure that we really have a strong understanding, not only of what you're looking for, but who are the voices that you need us to reach out to, and who are the people that you want to be sure are present throughout the process. When we are working on, and I should mention, phase 1 will also get into broader topics such as like salary range, not an exact contract, but the range for the advertisement. We'll also make sure that we have a really strong understanding of any major events that are upcoming, whether that's a bond that you're seeking, whether that's a budget cut process that you're going through. Any of those things are really helpful for us. And then we'll also determine the advertising venues. For your district, I would absolutely recommend that you advertise nationally. AASA has a great resource for that. I would also recommend you're using the WASA and COSA, Oregon, Washington, likely California databases as well. And then we go out and hit the streets. It's our job to make sure you have a lot of candidates. The search that I did most recently, we ended up with 27 candidates in a much smaller district. And so that was a great turnout. We also are finding that that's been kind of our number, between 27 and 30 has been pretty regularly working for us. And then we always get it down. We try to bring you about 8 on that short list and then get it down to 3. The evaluation and screening, you will have the opportunity to see as much or as little as you want on each candidate. Sometimes there's a name that you had that you want us to go chase down. We'll go find them for you, and then we'll figure out if that's really somebody that may or may not be viable or not. The other thing is then we start a process of the filtering. Part of that filtering involves a video interview where they have the opportunity to answer some questions in a video format. That's really nice for you because you all have very busy schedules, and you'll be able to watch those shortlist videos and really determine who you think is worth your time and who may not be a good fit. Once we move past that, again, Mike and I are here before you, and we would be talking about how you want to whittle those down to finalize your candidates. And then we'll support you throughout the candidate interview process, whether you want that to be multi-day and on-site, whatever you like, we're there to support you with. And then the transition and the guarantee. Once you've established your candidate, we do a few steps as far as goal setting in conjunction to make sure that you and your superintendent are off to a good start. And then your guarantee kicks in and we're there for you. The one piece I do want to bop back to for just a second is that stakeholder piece. Mike and I will be here for up to 3 days for you if you'd like, and we will work with your community. We work in your schools. One of my favorite things to do is I try to go to each of the high schools if possible and talk to kids. The amount of insight they have is usually spot on with the trends that we're seeing in the community, and it's really fun to hear their perspective and see what they like. There is, of course, data tools. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Every company is going to have a data tool. It's the age of AI. Of course there is. But the key to all of this, and it's important, I can't emphasize it enough, is it's going to come down to that working relationship piece. I want you to be happy. It means a lot to me to see your district succeed, not only because you're a regional leader, but also because kids benefit when adults are working together. And so I want to see that for your district. That's what we are all about. And that's why we have that longevity in our candidates long into the future, is we know how to navigate that. We know how to help people through that. The other thing that just comes with that is sometimes you don't want a long-term soup. Sometimes you might just need somebody to come in, do some specific things and get out. We just need to figure that out when we're working in the interim, when we're visiting in those initial meetings. And then we know to tell people as we're visiting with them, hey, this is probably going to be a 2 to 3 year district, and here's what you're going to need to accomplish in that period of time to set it up for the long-term vision, the person who's going to come next. There's different stages of need, and that's not a problem. We just want to understand what it is. This is your search price. You can always change that up, down a little bit depending on travel costs. Clearly, travel costs are going to be far less for you because I'm just driving across the river. That's really not that big of a deal. However, depending on where you want to advertise, that's where some of that fluctuation is as well. But that's going to give you a pretty good ballpark figure. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is who's behind the search. These are the tools that we're using, and that's ready to go. If you have any questions at all, I have packets for each of you. There's additional information in here, as well as cards, phone numbers, all of that, and you're always just welcome to text or call anytime. The key to note is throughout your search, I would be your lead, and so that means that if something pops up, you text or call me. The great thing is, because I am an active soup, I will not always be your callback person. It's often that I'll just have to get a hold of Mike, and then he'll take care of that, and then he and I connect regularly. But we don't want you to have to chase down which one of us is available in that moment. You get a hold of me, we take care of it from there. We've been doing this for a long time, and it's worked out well. One of the things that's very unique about Mac and Jake is that they have sitting soups as search consultants. That's kind of unique, but the reason for it is you need some fresh blood sometimes. And it's hard, the longer you're out of the role, to keep those professional connections and to make sure that those networks are still established. So by having the mix of someone who's retired and someone who is still in the work really gives that balance. Any questions at all? Anything I rushed through? Still have 30 seconds.
Any questions? Turn on your mic, please.
What does your process look like in working with stakeholders at the beginning to develop characteristics for the superintendent?
It's a twofold process. One involves an online tool where it's just basically a stakeholder survey, and then we'll distribute that. We'll work with your communications team to distribute that onto your website as well as your social media and any other routes that you would like. Sometimes families want it, or boards will want it sent out to each of the families. That's all very possible. And that online survey ensures that anybody we didn't think to capture has an opportunity and doesn't feel that their voice wasn't given a chance to be heard. And then we'll work with you to identify 5 to 6 focal groups. That can be business leaders, it can be district partners from other areas, it can be union representatives, parents. We have a broad variety. I recently did the Pendleton, Oregon search, and so in that search, we were certain to include tribal leadership as one of our focal groups. And so whichever groups you tell us that you want us to meet with, we go and we meet with them. Often we'll have them hosted in just a single site, but in the case of Pendleton, we did go out to the tribe to make sure that we made it more accessible for their input. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. During those meetings, that's where we're collecting a lot of that data. We're asking all of them the same information, same questions, and then we consolidate that. And then we end up giving you, and you'll actually see an example in your packet, a stakeholder summary. So it's going to show this is what we found from the online information. This is what we found in your individual groups. They're going to be anonymized for names, but the groups will be identified. And that way you can start to see what are your common trends. And then we'll also have an overall summary of, based off of all of these are what we're seeing as your priorities. And then it's up to you to determine if those echo what you think.
Other questions? I'm curious about the disc analysis stuff that you mentioned very briefly. Is that something that you would offer after the placement of a superintendent to figure out kind of how they work with their leadership team and with the board? Or is it something that you do with the short list of finalists to try to match them up?
So let me see if I can get back. No. So the answer is it can be done with either your shortlisted people or after. And that's completely up to you and how you want that to be done.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. The one thing to note is, again, we're pretty nimble. And so we have a basic structure to our process every time that's followed. But there's been different times where people really want something very different. And we're always game. It's fun. I learn something new every search.
Any more? Nope. Great. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Yep. if they have a walker for you.
Oh, yeah.
Is it there?
No.
It wasn't there yesterday, but it's
It's
there.
what, Tori's? No, it's not Tori's walker, it's his assistant's walker. They asked me if
She
they
might need
needed
to borrow
go get
your
me the walker
your
that was
walker.
out there. No, I'm fine, it's Brenda's, that's fine. You're fine. I just wrenched my mom. I got my Skechers.
I was afraid your dogs wouldn't trip you going down the stairs.
Oh. I'm supposed to go watch Ham's dog this weekend, and I was terrified. I'm good as long as I don't bend over or step down or
Twisting your stand. Go ahead and get started when you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much. And this advances just with the green. Okay, great. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to visit with you this evening. I'm Chris McDuffie, and I'm a senior associate with HYA. My colleague, John Bash, was not able to join me this evening, but we would be the team working with this esteemed school district. So I've had 43 years in public education in the state of Washington, a teacher, principal, superintendent for 17 years, and also served as an adjunct professor for higher ed for 26 years, training principals and superintendents. John has a similar background, just not the higher ed piece. We've both been with HYA for the last 6 years. And again, we've worked all across mostly Washington, but also some California and Arizona school districts. Share a little bit more about that. In your packet, and I'm sorry I didn't realize so many additional cabinet members would be here. I would have brought one for everyone, but there are copies of the slides on the right, and on the left is a flow chart, just an overview of the search process. And like most firms, it's a phased process. For us, it's a 4-phase process beginning with both engage and recruit simultaneously. So the first 2 phases are going on simultaneously. Third phase, of course, moving into the selection process. And finally, our strong commitment to transition. And I would love to share just a little bit about some highlights from each of these phases. We know that you've certainly had a chance to look at our full proposal. So regarding the engagement phase, again, we've received a lot of great feedback about the depth of our homework and our relationship building with your constituents. And it really does start with getting to know your district and your community deeply. I mean, everything from the status of your strategic plan, finances, academic performance, bonds and levies, communications, et cetera, et cetera. And really understanding where you are, what you're looking for moving forward, and how we can help meet those needs. So we were so impressed with the homework we've been able to do thus far. Really impressed with your website and how you communicate the status of your finances, your bonds and levies, your facility planning. You've got a lot going on, and from the first blush of our homework, really impressive work. So from there, we're listening and learning. It begins with a planning meeting with the board to make sure that we clearly understand your desires. There's a lot of flexibility. We customize every search to the particular desires of the school board and the needs of the district, of course. So one-on-one interviews with the board, and then we'll ask the board and senior leadership for feedback about individuals and groups in your district and in your community that you would like us to have personal conversations with. And we sit down with every single one of them. So we really do believe in that personal touch. We're present throughout the search personally. I know a lot of work can be done remotely, but we just highly value the relationships and the personal communications. So we will be addressing those groups and individuals based on the board and senior leadership's recommendations. But from there, we do recommend at least one, maybe several community forums. One, opportunity may not be enough for this size of district. So opportunities for people to attend in person or watch virtually to really understand the scope of this work. And then we also recommend, of course, a stakeholder survey, and there's a couple different variations on that theme that we could talk with you about based on the board's desires. So we can go from there. But all of that feedback is resulting in the leadership profile report, reflecting what we've learned based on three main questions. What's working well? What are the greatest assets of the district and the community? Number two, of course, what are the greatest challenges moving forward? And number three, what are the qualities and characteristics you're looking for in your next superintendent? So those three questions are the foundation, no matter whether it's a one-on-one interview or focus group or forum, resulting in the leadership profile report. So recruiting, as we mentioned, that begins right away. And again, we're ready to start yesterday, beating the drum for you. But we really appreciated the quote from AASA that talks about HYA being recognized as a proven methodology and a national reach, how important that is. So we do have, again, a long track record as a national firm, and we have over 135 associates across the country, almost in every state. But so we have a built-in network for that national reach. We're always helping each other to seek out those best matches for your needs. So it's a great partnership. But then we, local leaders, and John and I have between us over 80 years of experience in public education in the state of Washington. So lots of connections locally as well. But we will be reaching out to candidates. We don't just post and hope that they will come. So we are going to be using our network. We're going to be reaching out, knocking on doors based on the leadership profile report, who's out there that would be a good match for Richland. So We're also, during this phase, doing those deep reference checks and background checks and social media checks and media checks. And we are developing a comprehensive report for the board that I'll talk a little bit about. So once the position closes, based on the board's calendar, we're moving into the select phase and wanted to share just a couple highlights from this slide. First of all, we, as I mentioned, put together a comprehensive report for you. We want the board to be able to see every completed application. We don't screen out and present a slate to you. We really do want you to see every candidate who meets the minimum qualifications, right? So we don't screen anyone out, but we want you to see those and have a tiered feedback from us as the professionals who have done this homework. Want you to be able to look at all of the data we uncovered and see that we have rated them a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 candidates. So that report goes to the board. We also are preparing you for the interview process, helping you with a ton of interview questions for you to choose from, or asking you for your own that you would like to develop, and we work with you to fine tune those. But again, we tailor that to every single community and district, and based on your leadership profile report. So we're preparing you for the interview process. Again, during the planning meeting, we'll talk about, is the process confidential through semifinalists and then wide open again during finalists, which is typically the case. But lots of opportunity there for your community to re-engage and provide feedback for you. So then an offer and an acceptance is made, and we walk alongside you, providing you with all kinds of tools, recommended language, et cetera, et cetera. So finally, that fourth phase, I do wish I had an hour and 5 minutes with you rather than 5 minutes, but transition phase. We walk alongside you, we stick with you at least through the first year, making sure that things are going well. We offer a board superintendent workshop where we facilitate getting to know each other, setting some working agreements, helping you to do some initial goal setting. So again, those have been really well received and valuable for the new team. So again, that's an opportunity that we kick off the transition with. But we also have just added this offer for the new superintendent and a couple board members, if they're interested, to be a part of the Transition Academy. And that's a 6-month commitment, 1 meeting a month virtually, talking with other new superintendents and boards across the country. And many of us are facilitating those workshops, but it does have several deliverables you can see on the right that really can be of value to kick off that first 6 months with the new superintendent. Draft timeline was in your proposal, but again, we are ready to start yesterday. You are in the optimal spot, getting out so early. And so I commend you for that, jumping on the process, making these decisions early, because you're just going to increase your chances of finding, the best candidates. So again, this just gets you to a decision by March at the latest. This can be adjusted if you prefer February as a goal. That's really doable. But regardless, you'll have several months in the spring for the new superintendent to be present, get to know the constituents, be in the schools, at community events, et cetera. So lots of flexibility there. One of the assets that we've gotten great feedback about is our board portal. It's really a password protected one-stop shop for the board members only. where we keep, it's a repository for all of the materials. Just if you had a question, you wanted to go back and look at documents, et cetera, it's a repository all in one place. But that is also where we upload all of the information about the candidates. So we'll obviously talk much more about that. But the board portal has been a great asset. Another thing we've been really thanked for over the 20 plus searches we've done recently is trying to minimize the impact of this exhaustive process on your staff. We understand it can really have an impact on some key positions, oftentimes executive assistant, communications, technology. Some of those are the ones most often impacted, but you can see the tools and resources, sample forms, we've got it all, and we're going to just partner to minimize that impact for your team. So why HYA? You've got a lot of great options. A lot of these folks are friends of mine over the many, many years we've worked together. But why HYA? And why did I choose to work for HYA? I really, when I retired as superintendent of Edmonds, that I was just drawn to the professionalism, incredible resources, the reputation across the country, and the menu of options. You know, it's not just searches, strategic planning, board superintendent relations, board governance, superintendent evaluation, sort of that whole package of support that this firm provides. You also have in John and me a really dedicated and supportive search team. Our company also does not hire sitting superintendents or other administrators. Those folks already have more than a full-time job. And so we want to be sure that districts know that we're committed to them. We also worry that it's a perceived conflict of interest. So none of our associates across the country are sitting superintendents or administrators. Couple of slides, just recent searches from John and me, a lot in Washington, of course. Recent feedback we've received from some board members that we really appreciate, and you have a long list of references in your proposal that I'm sure you would be following up on. So I'll exhale now and thank you so much for the opportunity to present in 5 minutes and open it up for any other questions that you might have for me.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Rick.
Hi, thank you. So does HYA help with the contract portion at the end?
Yes, partner with you. Of course, we recommend, along with legal counsel, sometimes you tap your own staff, whether that's finance or HR, you know, so it can be a team approach or not. But we definitely have a lot of history and support in that area. Recommended language even.
All right. How long have you and John worked together as a team on this?
Yeah, all 6 years.
Okay.
We both started with HOA at the same time, ironically.
But
Didn't know each other before that.
You two are partners then, have done this? Like, do we see both of you over here? How does that work?
Yeah, we do most things together, but again, we're also very cognizant of travel costs, and we would be weighing out, do we both need to be, at that meeting? But for instance, in the engagement phase, what has worked really well, regardless of the size of district, is to really commit to like 2 full days that we are just immersed. And we're talking like 15-hour days, but superintendents are used to that. And then the evening between the 2 days is the community forum or staff forum or however you want to structure that. So we are just immersed so that we're not making multiple trips. That's just one example, but we are most often together. We're both present for interviews, etc.
questions? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Best
thanks for
wishes to
coming.
you all.
Yep. So I think now we'll transition to our district goal discussion. And we did get some draft district goals for discussion. Oh, with the search firms? Yeah, for sure.
When are we making a decision on that?
So we will make a decision on that Tuesday at our regular board meeting. Because we have to decide that in a public meeting and we can't make decisions in a workshop like this. So, yeah, so we're not making decisions here. Yeah.
Time in between, I know that they all had some references and things like that, so
Mhm.
if we wanted to check any of those, we need to do that before Tuesday.
Yep. And there's time. So for the Tuesday meeting, we start with the budget workshop at 4. That is nominally 2 hours or less. And then we have a break in the middle from 6 to 6:30 with executive session where we can have some discussion about those firms. And then in the public meeting, we would vote on who to select.
Question, did any of the board want to have a short conversation about that? Why everything is so fresh in our mind?
We can have discussion about it now for sure, if you guys want to have some discussion now.
Is there somewhere, I mean, I know we got it, I just don't know if it's like, someone can tell me where it's readily available, the different proposal costs. Because only the middle person like talked about that in their presentation. Sorry, my microphone's not on.
Yeah, each of the full proposals that we received has a cost proposal in there.
Are they together in an email or separate?
They're together in one email that BJ sent to us, yes.
Two of the prices are similar. One is quite a bit more than the other one.
And one thing to look at is whether expenses are included in the base price or not in the base price, because I think at least one of them has a base price without expenses, but has estimated expenses. So, and then they have optional offerings that have different rates as well. So you can have a look at that. I don't know if folks want to have some discussion about that before we move on. We can do that. Up to you. Okay.
I liked the second, I liked the last two. I need to read more about these, but I'm not gonna be here on Tuesday, so you guys can
Okay.
I can maybe call in if you want me to.
Yeah, I'm going to be remote on Tuesday too, so yeah. Let's see. Okay. All right, let's move on to the goals then. And we have the draft goals documents that were provided. Let's start with the academic goals, since those were first in the packet that we were provided. Brian, you want to just kind of tee that up and walk us through?
You bet. So the goals that were submitted were a working draft of what we plan on working on for the upcoming 26-27 school year, and really wanted to frame it around the work of Dufour and therefore questions that happened during PLC time with teachers. So we focused on 3 areas with that theme in mind. continuing the work around MTSS and assessment literacy. So we just finished in the spring our MTSS guidebook. Now's the work of the implementation of that guidebook and getting that out in front of administrators and teachers. So developing a working plan around that for the year. Continuing the high cap services. So again, that was a year of groundwork last school year, and now it's the implementation cycle and the continuation of that work. And then there's been a consistent theme around harassment and intimidation and bullying, and trying to capture a way to incorporate that into some of our goal work, where we're doing some auditing of our practices, some of our reporting mechanisms, and then really incorporating a system where the threat assessment process is brought to more of a streamlined process in terms of how schools are getting that information into a consistent data bank for people to, the people that need to know are able to know. So that's kind of a quick summary and overview of those 3 goals that are tied into that MTSS overall framework, and the 4 questions, focusing on what do we expect students to learn, how do we know when they're learning it, so the intervention piece of it, what do we do when they already do know it, that extension, and then how will we know? So that's the assessment piece. And in there, we talked about creating some common formative assessments across the system. I think we've gotten away from that a little bit. So using the planning time that people have to work together to create those common assessments, to know how do we know the answers to these questions, and making sure that those things are in place. So that's just kind of a real quick overview, and open it up for questions, thoughts, or comments.
I have a quick comment on the HiCap one. Thanks. On the HiCap section, I want to focus on have a teaching and learning goal. One of the things that I'd like to see us do, as opposed to specifically specifying it as HiCap, use those same goals in each one of our categories: basic education, special education, and HiCap, so that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction in the areas of our expertise. Because I think that we want to make sure that we're not that we would lose focus on those things, but I think by having it be a goal, each one of those departments and each one of those areas will have a specific interest in making sure that we're moving in all those areas, as opposed to specifically specifying that for just HiCap. Because I think most of the steps that we would do in there would be applicable for Zach's department and basic ed and teaching and learning.
Are there questions for Brian on any of these?
Brian, you'd also sent over the school improvement plans, which included a lot of their goals, as the different buildings put together. And looking through all of those, there's a lot of common themes on all of them. I mean, they all really well lined up with each other. So a lot of it was centered around the typical growth, attendance, behavior. Those are 3 of the big ones, that we saw there. So as we develop our district goals, it's got to kind of dovetail with that too, right? And
Absolutely.
fit right in there.
Yeah, and so I don't want to cut you off, so
No,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
That's
yeah.
my first thought of the
Yeah,
day. So.
absolutely. Well, good thought, man. Hey, nice work.
It's only 5 o'clock.
I think that's really what that MTSS goal is designed to do, is to support those goals that are in the school improvement plan. The typical growth in reading, the typical growth in math. That's what we want to provide conditions for, is for teachers to be able to collaborate on how to make those things operate and grow. And if they aren't growing, how do we know that information? That's the crux of those 4 questions. So whether it is in literacy, or whether it is in math, or whether it is in behavior or attendance, it's providing that structure and the supports for teachers to be able to come together and do that. So really through that MTSS lens and that rollout of that guidebook and that implementation of that is directly supporting school improvement plans for sure. Would be my answer to that. I mean, I can defer to anybody else across the table here too to chime in.
No, absolutely. I think that was a really good question, Dan, in terms of making sure everything's aligned. So, yep.
So if you were to kind of boil it down to just a quick 3-sentence goal on that, how would you phrase that? I mean, you're trying to get that all into one.
For the MTSS goal,
Yeah.
For me, it's answering DeFore's 4 questions. Those are what we're after, is how do we know students are learning, and what do we do when they're not, and what do we do when they are. And those are in being able to address those questions is critical. And I don't think we have pockets of teams that are doing that really well. So we want to replicate those areas. So we can identify certain grade levels at certain schools that are really knocking it out of the park and have great practices in that area. So we want to be able to expand that and make sure that that's more consistently done across the system. That wasn't 1 sentence, but
That's all right.
3 sentences.
I got that.
So I really like what you just stated, Brian, and I think that wasn't something I picked up in this document on the MTSS. So
Okay.
it might be an opportunity for you to think about how you would do that, how you're going to identify the best practices. And again, to Jill's point, in many of the different areas, and then how do you perpetuate those things out? Thinking about your timeline and your milestones, when would you be prepared to present what aspects of this to the board through, kind of our board calendar between now and next June? Might be an opportunity for you to think about how you could update some of this to be a little bit more explicit about those things, and
You
how
bet.
you measure the success of that for identifying those best practices, how you propagate them, how
Yeah.
you get people on board.
Absolutely. And I think intentionally vague for some of those reasons, wanted to get some sponsorship today before we really dug into those timelines and got those things established. But absolutely, we can map that out and have some clear benchmarks and timelines for reporting.
And with those benchmarks, that would probably also include the expectations on each school level, right? So
Elementary,
this
middle,
is-
and high.
So
Yeah.
this is our house. Then you're going to start building rooms and add
Yeah.
furniture, do the whole thing so that it all comes together.
For HiCap, I know we have that presentation coming up, and so I think there may be more feedback that comes once we get that more detailed kind of presentation
Okay.
in terms of thinking about what phase 1 services look like at every school and kind of how we're trying to build and grow that, so that we're making sure we're really serving all of our HiCap kids and how we kind of build goals into that. I think that would be a part for me as a metric of what we're really looking for long term with that is how many kids we identify, how many kids we're serving, and how
Okay.
we're increasing that service model,
Yep.
and demonstrating success of that. Yeah.
So then, I guess for clarification, to Jill's question, I guess maybe my response would be that MTSS goal is really what covers everybody. And we still have work to do in the HiCap area. So that is why this is still explicitly called out and a continuation of that work
Right.
that's happening this year.
Right.
So are we okay with keeping that
Yes.
in that kind of format? Okay.
Yes, with that
Yeah,
explanation.
and I think my point was after we have that next presentation at the meeting, the first meeting in August, second meeting in August, we may have more feedback on that plan that you can incorporate into the goal as we refine the goals and some of the metrics.
So I'll bring another iteration of the goal as best that I can to that 25th meeting in August, and then based upon that feedback, we can incorporate that
Right.
into that as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And I think the thing that I would like to know each time that you're talking to us about stuff is what can we do? Like, what do you need from the board? Right? Because, I mean, I think this is all great information, but I'm just looking at it kind of like, okay, what's my job? Right? What am I, besides give you a pat on the back and tell you you're doing awesome? I could die every time, but like, what do you need us to do? That's what that's
Yeah.
the information that I need
Right.
from everybody all the time.
For sure. And I think that's a great point, Bonnie, right? It's just really trying to come back to us during the year with what are the resources you need to make this better? What are the policy changes you need to make this better?
Exactly.
Where are the barriers that you find, right? Is it resource driven? Is it policy driven? Finances driven? Something else, right? That you guys need help with from the board, because ultimately, that's what we're here for, to help you. And I feel like, particularly with the HIB goal, that's an opportunity to not just implement what we already have, but really taking a deep dive look into what our policies and procedures say and how we could improve them, and then developing kind of that implementation. So there may be some best practices with our current processes that are not being fulfilled consistently across all the schools. But I think one thing I'd like to see is how do we deep dive in terms of what's working and what's not working. Again, you guys coming back to us with what are the policy changes we need, procedure changes we need, consistency, resources, whatever, right? How does the board help you guys be successful?
And I think another thing that the board can do to help you guys, stay on the governance level, which is what Katrina's talking about, but also make sure that you all have a clear understanding of what information and data we're looking for in order to make decisions. So when you present to the board on each one of these things, I think we as a board need to decide very clearly for the administrators, what does that data look like? What are we looking to see in that, and what decisions are we hoping to make with that information? Because I think I might be over guessing, but I think that is sometimes where the disconnect is, in you guys not always necessarily understanding what it is we're looking for. And I think between all of us, we need to make sure that we're very clear with you on that moving forward this year, so that nobody's trying to guess and put something together and then it's not right. And I think that'll help the board too, because that requires us to have a common voice and speak with one voice in the information that we're trying to achieve.
Well, and I just don't want to get, I love the data that you bring and everything, but I don't have the expertise to know what to do with all of that. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds of your job. I just want you to, tell me what I need to do in my job to help you do your job. That's
Other questions, comments, Rick?
I have comments, I guess. Mine are going to be different than, so MTSS, we have a handbook, but MTSS is decades old, and so is DeFore still alive? I'm not sure, but the books that I have of theirs are decades old as well. So I'm wondering, are we doing the same thing over and over again? We've had MTSS and DeFore's 4 questions in the district for decades already. Are we teaching new teachers or administrators? I don't get how this is going to move the needle. It seems like we're doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last 20 years. How is this any different?
My response to that would be that I don't think that those practices are being consistently implemented across the system. They are collectively bargained practices in our CBA around DuFour's 4 questions and what needs to be happening during PLC time on those Fridays. And I think our administrators need some tools to be able to work with their building leadership teams to be able to set the stage for what a successful PLC will look like. And there are, like I mentioned earlier, there are teams that are doing that really, really well. There are also teams that aren't doing that well, and we want to address and be able to have some supports in place for our leaders and for our administrators and work jointly with our union leaders to make sure that we're following all collectively bargained practices, that this isn't coming out of the blue somewhere, but this is something that is of joint interest to both of us to make sure that we're getting the most out of the time that we have. Time is a very valuable resource that we don't have a lot of, and if we're not utilizing the time that we do have to get the work done, then we're missing the mark. And I think as a system right now, through our practices, that's why this MTSS work is so important, is because we're inconsistent and we need to do a better job of that. Team, is there any other thing you would follow up on with that?
But so I don't disagree with what you said, but that to me seems like um, leadership challenge rather than redefining what MTSS is, or especially training the teacher level. Seems like training administrator level for in selected areas for implementation, and that seems more like mentoring and leading areas that need help rather than district-wide initiative. That should be an ongoing thing, not we should be doing MTSS and doing all of this year, not implementing it later. We should have been doing it last year, and I think we were doing it last year.
Yes, and we're continuing to learn and continuing to grow and continuing to get better. And that's what the growth and I think the crux of all of the goals that we have is to grow and get better. And I don't think if we were auditing, and I don't want to say this, I don't know how to say this kind of delicately, but our we need to make sure that our collaboration efforts are getting the results that we need. And we need to have our teachers have the tools to make that collaboration meaningful. And so that's part of what this spells out, is getting leadership teams involved with getting common formative assessments at grade levels and content areas, so that when they come together, they have something that they can look at that's not just iReady data that is 3 times a year, not just SBA data that is 1 time a year. So it is ongoing assessments that they can look at and make instructional decisions in real time. And I don't think, I guess the reason why it's important and why we're bringing it forward is if that was already being done system-wide, we would be focusing on something else.
So I agree with everything you just said. What I'm looking for in goals are what specific things do you expect to see happen in schools? So are you expecting to see elementaries implement things like walk to read or math groupings or things like that?
Those are strategies and implementation metrics that can happen. I would say those types of strategies are more in they're going to come out of the high cap work that we're doing, and that differentiation that needs to happen and that learning that is happening, that is also part of this MTSS system. So answering that question, when students don't know and they need intervention, what do? And when teachers have the right answers with the same assessments and they're looking at the same information, then they can collectively make those decisions better as a building. When students already know that information, what do they need and how do we address their needs? If they're all scattered and looking at different things, the system can't answer those questions collectively. But if they're looking at the same information in the same way, then they can begin to build systems to address walk to read or those types of win systems that some buildings are doing in pockets. Again, it's in pockets. We want to be more consistent.
So what you just said is what I'm looking for in the goals. How do we get that consistency with practices that we know work?
Yep.
Because in the goals, it's very vague right now,
Yep.
and they're drafts still. And we have some strong educational leaders in buildings, and we have some that need more support. I'm interested in how that's being addressed at your level, and because at least the elementary folks
Yeah.
work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our starting point is training on PLCs with our leadership team starting next week. On August 12th, we're going to have Amy Miller. She's a PLC trainer, comes from White River, well-renowned system for PLCs. She's going to be working with all of our administrators on the 12th to get the ball rolling, and then that's going to be an ongoing process that we haven't mapped out explicitly in here, but we can certainly do that to map out what the training looks like for throughout that's the intention, is that training is ongoing for our leaders throughout the year. That then bleeds into their buildings we want to equip them to have the tools to go back to work with their leadership teams that then impact the practices that are happening on Friday afternoons in our PLC time.
I think one of the hard things is that it is a little bit vague and abstract, but I mean, that's kind of what I was hoping for at this point, because what I was hoping was we could have a discussion, some brainstorming, looking at what were our goals last year? What are we doing with those that have been unfinished? What are our goals this year? And kind of just hash that all out as a group. And so I guess I wasn't looking for the complete firm
Nuts and bolts.
detail yet, but I was hoping that as this being the starting point and kind of just being a rough idea of this is what we want to focus on, this is how it kind of meshes with what our schools came up with their school improvement plans. And then as we talk it all through, we firm up on a actual goal with a measurable, and actual details about how it's going to be implemented, and then we go do it. Right? So I think it makes for kind of a slow start to the conversation, but I think that's kind of necessary.
I agree, Dan, so that they're done collaboratively together.
Right. Yeah. And with us involved.
Yes.
In that goal development as well.
I guess my point is MTSS and do force for questions. That's the core of what educational leaders do. This isn't a goal. This is what you're hired to do. This is the job, is to help your educational leaders in the building use PLC time to improve student learning and using MTSS to meet kids where they are, which is the essence of do force for questions, right? This is the whole. This is like having a bakery with the goal of baking things. This is the core of what's supposed to be done. So for the board to say this is a bad idea is like telling a baker you're not going to bake stuff. So I'm not sure why we're talking about it. I guess to me this is continuous
Because
improvement.
I think what you're saying is that you want the goal to say more about
Specifics.
being more increasing the consistency or improving the consistency, right, of the MTSS, because that's the basis of what we do, right? That's the basis of the job, is using MTSS to make sure every kid gets what they need to learn what they need to learn. And what you're saying is, yeah, duh, that's the goal. But what you're looking for is more of the, like, how to measure the improvement of that, I guess. Is that what you're saying? I'm kind of confused on what your question is. Because I think if this is the meat of the job, then
Yeah.
you always have to have that as a goal. You
Yeah.
always have to have improving that as a goal. It has to always be there. So I'm fine that it's there because it's important. And I think if we have noticed over the last few years that consistency and implementation has been slacking, then keeping it up there in the forefront of everyone's mind is important.
I'm looking for goals of what are the best practices. MTSS and everything we're talking about is our systems. What are the best practices that directly impact students that we're putting into buildings? This to me is training our principals who should know, and they all know MTSS and they know what PLCs are. Um, they know DeForest questions because if I know them, they know them a whole lot better than I do.
I, I,
I'm looking for what things are being done that directly impact students that improve student learning. Where do we have those? We have shining stars in this district. Where are they? What are they doing that's different that the other schools can learn from and implement? That's what I'm asking.
so I think that's exactly what he said. And one of the things, and the time that I've been on the board, one of the things that I've been a little bit frustrated with, and not district, just the way things operate, is that we don't have a lot of systems in place. We don't have a lot of those non-negotiables that principals can say, this is the way we do this, this is the way we do this. Now you can put your own spin on it. The reason I really like this goal is because in the time frame that I've been here, we talk about it, we do it, and it's kind of like my gym membership that I maybe have paid for the last 20 years. I've had it, but I don't use it like I should. So if we really put a focus on and make sure that we are utilizing and implementing this on a consistent fidelity level within schools, we will move the needle. Because, like you said, Rick, this is the nuts and bolts of what education is. This is what we're striving for and what we're doing. But if we're not doing it on a consistent level, then we're not going to get consistent results. So, the 20 years that we have had it and haven't done it, we can't go back and make any changes. But what we can do is going forward from right now, really ensure that our administrators and educators really understand how to utilize this and how to use it with fidelity and implement it in the classroom as opposed to just talking about it. That's what my thought is with what Brian's trying to talk about, because and I don't think he wanted to put those details that you're talking about in necessarily right now, what those steps look like to move the needle, because what if 5 of us decided, yeah, that's not what it is, and then he's just spent, 20
So-
hours trying to.
I
Put
think
something together.
what I'm hearing, right, is this is a great plan because it sounds like what we should already be doing to some degree, and maybe there's not consistency. Um, what we might like to look for success measures are how we're going to measure that consistency, right? How are we going to identify the best practices in different PLCs? How are we going to document and propagate those practices in other schools? And then how are we going to demonstrate at the end we have actually done that, so that this is a goal that has moved the needle because we're going to do something differently at the end of the year, as opposed to we're going to do PD on everybody on how you should already be doing your job. And then we're going to hope it's going to take hold, and we're going to hope you're going to do something differently next year, right? So I think what I'm hearing from Rick and from Jill and Dan and Bonnie is we support the idea. We'd like maybe a little bit more information as you flush it out for what you're going to do differently that we don't currently do. How are you going to assess who has best practices and bring that to the board, right? We've talked about having these meetings being good working board meetings done in the public, as opposed to a public meeting where we talk about schools and what we're doing, and bring us the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's working and what's not working, and then how you plan to work with your teams to make it better, right? How do we measure success of that at the end of the year? So as you kind of flesh it out as a goal, thinking about not just the delivery of stuff, but how we identify the best practices, propagate them, and measure the success of it.
And one thing I want to bring to a point too, I think just doing something new, just to do something new, I want us to just caution us to be really careful about that. We've already implemented a lot of new things. I want to take our elementary reading curriculum. Huge, huge shift when we went to the science of reading with the letters training. I actually, at the SD today, had a parent come up to me. This is what I think we should be measuring. And said, Shelley, I just want you to know I have a child, 2 of my children have dyslexia. One is in the Richland School District system, one is in another system. She said night and day, the progress and how well her child that is in the Richland School District is doing with the dyslexia. I mean, those are things that we need to highlight. Those are impacts. You know, our students with dyslexia, how are they doing in our system? So I don't want us to just, chase a shiny object to do something different just to do it, because we could negatively impact the things that are doing really well. And I think there's a lot of things that we don't measure that maybe we should look at. I mean, that was very, um, to me, that was big. That's something really big that she is sharing that really impacted a child in our district. And so I want to make sure we're looking at the right things, we're measuring the right things that really do have impact. I mean, she told me today it's changed that child's life.
Right. And I think that's a great example, right? I mean, the new reading curriculum, science of reading implementation, and that whole study was a big shift,
Yes.
right? And was a really good thing that was done, by the board at that time to implement within the district, right? And working with that whole team. So, I mean, I agree, that's a great example. And what I think I'm hearing though is we want to know, that was done because we knew that there was a gap in the reading curriculum based on new things that could be brought in. So if you're bringing something new in, what are we bringing in that's new, as opposed to, we're going to deliver it all and do it better than we do it today. And if it is that, then maybe there's something else we should be focusing on, like math curriculum, right? And how we really move the needle in math.
Right. And I think too, the beauty of that adoption, which if I had to use an example of a wonderful, the change, making a change and a successful implementation, that was very grassroots driven as well. That was not top down at all. It wasn't that we're going to ask you all to do this now, because just because something is really successful at White Bluffs does not mean we can replicate it and it's going to be successful at Jefferson Elementary. That the educator buy-in is so important in any kind of shift or change. So I just want us to keep all those things in mind. And a lot of it is because they're not exactly the same. The school culture, the school climate. We want consistency of systems, like a reading adoption. I mean, I know districts where you can pick 3 different reading adoptions. There's a menu. I mean, so we've made some big changes that are very, very consistent. And I know we're starting the big math work. And at the conference we were at today, the state is changing all the standards, and so there's some big work that our elementary teachers are going to do that I don't want to lose sight of, in terms of the new standards in mathematics. Derek and Jen and I sat in on it. That's going to be new things that they're going to be implemented. So we've got to somehow capture that there is all this new stuff we're doing that's going to change practice, and that I just am worried we're going to miss the mark and not see progress. Yeah.
And I think in relation to that too, I think we need to remember too, the reason I said making sure that we understand what it is we're looking for and what we're measuring, because we don't do the how, we do the what, Ultimately, our goal should be we want to see each one of our kids in K through 3 reading at grade level and a 15% growth, okay? As simple as that is sort of our role. And then you guys go in and put together what those programs look like to bring that to fruition. I think our goal needs to be pretty high level encompassing. So rather than calling it MTSS, it's what do you need to do on a district level to make sure that we see X amount of growth in every school? What's working PLC level, without getting so much in the nuts and bolts, because we all know, our goal is to educate kids and make sure that they can move into the next grade level effectively. But so academics is sort of a hard one to set a goal on to start with, because that is what our job is. So I don't, sort of disagree with her as far as, I think it's an important aspect and it goes into that, but what does that look like overall? Is it, K through 5, 5th graders are ready to go into middle school and 3rd graders are all at grade level? I mean, and then you guys do the work to make sure that happens.
I think one of the things that we're all seeing in the materials that we received leading up to this goals discussion. And I'll start with that again, back to the school improvement plans and then the stuff that you sent over. And as Rick pointed out, it is what we do, right? This is the core mission, right? But so reading between the lines, we're hearing that I think from every level, right? Because the school improvement plans that when I looked through them, so many of them were looking at typical growth goals, and some of them were very ambitious. Some of them were looking at trying to get 10% better, right? So if you had 65% that met typical growth last year, they want 75% this year. So we're seeing that, and then Brian comes in with what he sent us, and I think it speaks to the same things that I'm hearing many voices kind of say we want our goals to be kind of when the sports coach looks at the team and says, tomorrow we're going back to basics. We want our goals to kind of align with that, is what I'm picking up on a little bit, right? But for a goal, when we finally flesh it all out, we're going to have some mark we're trying to reach with that, right? And Jill said, leave the implementation up to the professionals and stuff. But the schools kind of told us what their mark was. As the administration now coming with this, what is our mark then to try to achieve? Is it that we have all these schools that came up with their goal and we get all of them to achieve it? Is that our mark? I mean, what is it on that? And that doesn't have to be today, but I think that's what we need to work towards.
I mean, I think some of the student outcome metrics are going to be lagging indicators, right, of the success of what you did this year and what you do next year. So I think, thinking about how you're going to identify what we're going to do differently, what's not working well, what is working well. If it's a grassroots effort that you need, how are you going to do that, right? How are you going to identify the really great PLCs and the not really great PLCs and get them on board with learning and changing their practice, right? That is a big leadership challenge. So how will you do that? Rick, do you have more?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, okay.
but I'll go slow. I liked how you summarized it earlier, Katrina. So I'm not asking for anything new. And on this goal, I'm not asking for the administration to identify what good practices are out there and what we should implement in other schools. Because I think the good practices exist in our district already. I don't think we have to go somewhere else because we've looked other places and everybody's asking the same questions. So where are we doing things really well and how do we transfer those practices into other schools or other classrooms or other PLCs? And so for me, we're going to have, as the board members talked about, we're going to have goals, right, about, hey, we're going to improve by 3% or 5%. And yeah, okay. I've seen those numbers now for 25 years. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't. All these kids are different. They're going to, it might work with some kids, it might work. We don't get to control all of that. But we can control what services and what practices we put in front of students. It's not always going to work, but we know it's working in some areas. So I'm looking for, maybe the goal is a commitment, like Katrina said, about trying to identify those areas where things are working well and finding ways to introduce those practices to other instructional leaders in the district. The science of reading, that curriculum came from grassroots. That was teachers coming, and the teachers didn't really feel heard, I don't think, by administration or board members at the beginning, but they made their case again and again. And I still haven't seen what impact it's having other than anecdotal, but that counts. When somebody says that it changed their child's life, that's a win in my book. And I don't really care as much about the rest of the numbers. I care about all the kids, but when a parent comes or when a kid comes and says, you've completely changed my life by what you've done, that's a win. So I'm looking for those practices that you find in whatever processes you have, and how do we implement that in other places? That's a hard goal to write. But when I look at the MTSS and do 4 questions, I can't believe anybody's graduated from with a teaching degree who hasn't already heard of that. reinforcing it is good. Helping people implement it, especially with leadership, is good. But doing training on that, I gotta imagine our 30-year teachers are gonna come to me and say, I don't want to go to that training, and I'm gonna say, I'm not your boss. Go do what your boss said. Okay, that's it. I'm done with this stuff.
That's all your comments on all of them?
I'm doing my best, yeah.
Okay. Other comments for Brian?
I just want to say about CKLA, I haven't talked to a single kid who says, I liked reading better before. They all like it better. The teachers that I've talked to like it better. They're enjoying it. Like everyone's having more fun. And I think it's amazing. So, and I don't know if that shows up on, I don't know how long that takes to show up on any scores, but I don't really put a lot of stock in scores. So I think if kids like reading and they like going to school and they like learning, that's a win.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, I lied, Katrina.
Okay.
I don't want to be the grumpy old guy because in my head I'm still 25, but
You are the grumpy old guy, Rick.
Right now I am. But right now I'm not, because when we look at test scores and when we look at those kinds of things, I know enough teachers. I have kids who are teachers. My dad's a teacher. My wife's a retired teacher and all that. Some kids blow off the tests, and it drives teachers nuts. And my wife and my kids will come home and say, "This kid finished in 5 minutes. You can't even read all the questions in 5 minutes." And so I don't put a whole lot of stock in those metrics either. I put stock in things like what Shelley talked about. When a parent comes and says, or what Bonnie says, when the kid says, I like reading better now, we're winning. So I want to see those practices spread as much as we can. Now I really am done.
And just really quickly to Shelley's point about the cultures being different at different schools, I don't think that, well, I guess I don't know what Jill's saying, but when I'm talking about taking what's working at some places and like replicating that other places, I don't think it can be exact, right? It's like taking the good idea and modifying it for your school. Just having like collaboration is I think really the goal, and it's hard to write that down. But
yeah, Bonnie, an example is like PBIS. PBIS is a framework, but each school calls it something a little bit different, implements their rules are a little bit different. There's some wiggle room in there, but there's an overall structure that is expected.
Yeah, and what works at one school might not work at another school, but and then and same with like UDL things, like every classroom is going to need different things, and I think that's kind of like when you come to us and say we need more support for universal design, or we need more support for PBIS or whatever for different places. Like I think that's, I don't know, that's what I'm looking for, is like what do you need from us to help make those things more successful in each different community in our district.
Yeah, and I agree. I think within different school cultures, how they implement it, as long as they're showing the wins and it's working, great. Freedom, all you need, right, to implement that. But when I look at the school improvement plans and the schools are going down, the scores are going down, and the plans are we're going to do the same stuff we did last year and we're going to do a little bit more, PD. I'm not convinced you're moving the needle, right? I'm not convinced you're really doing something new that you're going to move the needle. So, I think the freedom is great from school to school if it's working. But when it's not working is where I think we look to you guys and the admin to say, hey guys, this ain't working, right? How can we get you over here to this other school where they're killing it to spend a day figuring out what they do to see what you can learn to take back to your school, right? I mean, that's what I'm looking for.
And that's exactly right. And when I'm talking about having systems that are in place, just those best practices. We know that some things work, and if they work, they're going to work somewhat across the board, like the PLCs and how they're doing them and that. So yeah. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, then you might get a little help.
Right. Awesome. Let's move on to the facilities planning goal.
Okay, so the Community Facilities Task Force is getting close to bringing recommendations to the board. And so this goal is focused on going from facility planning to bond planning, and what that process will look like. And so that's the overarching theme of this goal, is to make that transition and what that looks like. I typed up a draft of the goal and then sent it over to Wade from Concertus to have him look at it, because he obviously has a lot of experience going through these processes. He made some tweaks in there, and so I think it's fairly fleshed out, and it gives us the opportunity to transition immediately from the recommendation, if approved by the board, into a bond planning process.
I have a little feeling that when the task force meets next week, there's a couple people that are not going to be okay with a February 2027. I saw that on here and I was like, oh, that's going to be a shocker for some people. But I think a little bit later in 2027, they might be more, I don't know, the date might change, I think, as a recommendation from the task force.
Right, and I think I had a conversation with Wade today that had some new SCAP availability that would be substantial.
Good news for us? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is really, we got to do it.
That could move the needle.
It's compelling enough about the matching dollars
Yeah.
that I think we take a look. We need
Yeah.
to take a look at it.
Basically, what it comes down to is OSPI is allowing school districts now to use pre-COVID enrollment numbers. And that you can do that. Don't ask why. That's what they're doing. And it's going to, but that will be eliminated in January.
Okay.
And so there are tens of millions of dollars on the table with that, using that prior enrollment number.
Well, and part of
versus now.
it's because districts aren't passing, people aren't going out for bonds, so there's money sitting there.
When did they decide that you could use pre-enrollment?
Didn't it just happen?
I don't know when the decision
Pretty
from
recent
OSPI
decision.
was made on that. I caught wind of it last week in a conversation, called Wade about it. He called OSPI.
So they really weren't advertising it, particularly if it's going to be gone in January. That's like barely 6 months that they allow school districts to do that. So,
Yeah, I don't know how they were advertising it. Like I said, I just kind of heard of it really at a casual conversation from somebody called Wade about it. He was already working with the guy from OSPI. So that may change some perspectives.
Right. But if it goes away in January, how does February help us?
It does if you have there's a form, if the board
If you're in
approved,
the queue.
Oh, got it. Okay.
there's a D3 form you fill out,
Yeah.
and that gets you into the queue.
queue.
So,
Yeah.
but that has the timeline on it, which I believe is mid-October.
so we would have to decide by mid-October, basically.
Yeah.
We'll have really good recommendations for you all. Like there's a lot, we have great stuff happening in our task force.
I think the only challenge for me in looking at this and thinking about it is the short turnaround time, because I feel like the engagement of the community to get the buy-in this quickly after passing the levy to go out with a bond may be the biggest challenge. So I think making that really strong argument for why now, right, will be super important to be able to say very clearly, if we do this right now, and if we pass this in February, we get X number of millions of additional matching dollars. It's a win-win.
Right.
And if we wait and we talk about it more and chew on it more and argue about it more so that we get to a 1% difference, then we lose this money, right? I mean, if we can come up with that really compelling story for the community and work really, really, really hard between September and December, when we would have to like put that final proposal in, for the ballot, then maybe we have a shot.
Well,
But
theoretically, if depending on how many tens of millions of dollars are in there, we could go out for a bond that gets us all the things that we need in the near future in our facilities without raising
Correct.
property taxes at all.
Correct.
Absolutely. But again, that's the big
Yeah.
communication challenge in this community, where people may assume smoke and mirrors, you're trying to pull a fast one on me, you're saying it's this, but it's really that. What's the catch?
Well, we
right?
have some of those people on the committee, so.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
By design.
Yes.
part of it is that kind of what's being fleshed out on a proposal, they are absolutely needs.
Yeah,
There's not wants in there. And so I think that will resonate with the community as well, that there's not gonna be any fluff in there. And I don't think anybody's gonna be able to look at the projects and say, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, you know.
No, it's more of a protecting our assets, things like in Chief Joe and what I've seen, I've been impressed with, and I know you both have been very involved in it. Our buildings, some of them are getting to the point, things like tennis courts, some of the tracks, we're going to start having injuries. I mean, there's some really compelling things about protecting our assets, protecting our kids. So anyway,
Yeah, and in August, towards the end of August, Concertus is planning on doing a phone survey that will engage community and get feedback. And they've done these in prior bond, as they're getting ready to run a bond, to make sure that the community, it's making sense to the community and they can support it. And statistically, they've had great success with those phone surveys and the passing of a bond. And also, they've also come back and said, hey, community is not backing this right now. It's not a good time. So, because you don't want to waste all that time and effort and not have it pass. So
A request that I have for those of you that are involved with that committee, for whatever we're going to include in this request, this bond request, it can be just like you said, no fluff, right? Because that's going to be the biggest thing that sells. Sure. More so than the tens of millions of dollars is the fact that it has no fluff, right? It's got to be very targeted. And I'll be very clear. I was all for that last bond, which was huge, right? It can't be that now. That didn't pass then. It would be even less likely to do that now, right? But for those things like you were saying, Shelley, that we know that we have to repair, keep in working order, some of those may not need to go to bond, right? So if that's the case, we don't want them on the bond because we don't want to be paying the interest on that debt.
Correct.
It becomes more expensive for us.
tracks will not be on the bond. Just to be
the
clear.
tracks wouldn't, but the tennis courts.
The tennis courts are
they're too expensive.
That's
But we need to make sure that when we say something like that, we say that it's too expensive, that we have good information about what exactly it's going to cost, and it's not just an estimate that we've come up with ourselves.
Agreed.
We need to have that really well defined.
I agree.
And what that project is, because those tennis courts in particular, we have say 8 courts, and it's 2 or 3 of them that are not usable. Right? If there's an option to say cut those out and replace those in the right way, I'm not saying just be cheap about it. I'm saying do it the right way.
Yeah, they need to be completely.
But don't replace the ones that don't need to be replaced.
Agreed.
It may be more doable, right? I don't know. I'm not
I
in the
agree.
business of doing track in tennis courts, but there are certainly going to be some things that we look at it, and we have the budget coming up next week. That we're taking a look at. And if you look at the capital projects portion of that budget, it seems a little bit larger than it's been in the past because we did the hearing before, and it's not going to make sense to say, hey, we're going to go spend that all because we're not left with much for the next year or the next year, whatever. But we do need to look at what can we do outside of the bond. I just think if we're trying to sell that to voters, we've got to make sure it's no fluff and we're just going out for what we need to borrow money to do and not for stuff that we don't have to borrow money to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And we do have good news. I mean, Travis has done such a great job leading the financial recovery. He, our rating is really good too, our bond rating. And so that will help as well. There's a lot of, the economy is strong enough that that helps when we borrow money.
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's going to be a big opportunity, right? To get Wade's help to think about if we do all of these, if we do these bare bone projects for February, it costs this much money. It's this small of a change of tax rate. If we put it off till April or August of next year, it's this much money, it's this much of a tax rate. This is an opportunity, right? If
Right.
we can build the resonating language with the community, we might have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Other feedback on this one? No? Okay, let's go to the next one. Strengthening staff evaluation through standardized administrative supports.
Yeah, so this goal is all about, supporting administrators and supervisors as they go through the evaluation process. So originally when we started doing this, it was about teacher evaluations, but then we expanded it because we thought everybody could use that same support. So it includes creating flow charts, especially with the REA contract. There's a lot of dates you have to meet, and if you don't, it can lead to grievances and that all that type of stuff. So the flow charts, then also calendaring items. So due dates, so the principals are getting and supervisors are getting pinged on those dates when they need to complete some process. And then the other part that is kind of a big part of this is we want to come up with some sort of framework for having difficult conversations, because that can be part of the evaluation process. And I don't just mean like in a disciplinary situation. Difficult conversations can be across the board. And so, I don't know that anybody in here that is a former principal or whatever had training as part of their schooling to have difficult conversations. And you kind of walked into it and you just started having them. And depending on your level of comfort with those conversations, you could be really good at it or really bad at it. So this is about getting training, having a very consistent framework that we can go to with new administrators as they come in, and supervisors that will help them be more confident and comfortable in those conversations. And so that's, to me, is one of the bigger parts of this goal. The timeline stuff and reminders, that's a little more easy to do, but the framework, I think, is where we're really going to get an impact with supervisors and principals being able to have those conversations effectively. So,
It clarifies that our expectations by going
Right.
through the training of that we expect you to be able to have these conversations and what they look like. So I think it's going to be really
And making
good.
sure that we're giving them the tools that they need to do that.
Right.
Because having difficult conversations, most people will just avoid them because it's uncomfortable for both. And really making sure that they know and understand that they're supported in having those conversations.
Right.
I think makes a really big difference.
I really thought this one was well done, and I like what you said about it. Good job.
Yeah, and I think just, a couple things you and I've already talked about related to, running this past some of our CBA representatives to make sure there's no red flags, there's no sensitivities, they understand the why, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is not a framework to administer disciplinary processes. This is a framework to follow the contract.
Right.
Which should make everybody happy. And, even in the difficult conversations, figuring out how you can use the really strong leaders that we do have in the district to help participate and do some of that training could make it even more well received if it's coming from their peers and not just from admin.
Right. Yeah, we talked about like HR standing up there and telling you this is how you do it. It's probably not going to be the best way to do it.
Right.
I will have to say though, Matt and Kelly are pretty good at having difficult conversations.
That's what they do all day, every day.
Yeah.
They get a lot of practice. Yeah. But I mean, to that point, I mean, I think you guys have some great principals in the district who
Yeah.
do this well, right? That you could leverage to help administer some of that training.
You bet.
And even examples, one of the ways we do them is we do scenario-based training. You're presented with the scenario, how would you handle it? Break people into small groups and have them play it out. It's amazing how different something is on paper from actually having to play it out. You learn a lot.
Yeah, last month I went to a 5-day training on conflict mediation, and they were doing these scenarios, and everybody had a role. They got a sheet, and you read what your role was, but you didn't know what everybody else's.
Else's role
And
is.
there's the
Yep.
mediator. You had to go in and try to solve this and find the underlying conflicts that were blocking an agreement and stuff. So, yeah, learned a ton just by watching people and then doing it. And yeah, that's the best way to do it. You practice and you get better at it. So,
Right.
yeah.
And often in those scenarios, you switch roles, right?
Yeah,
You
oh,
get
yeah.
a new scenario, you switch roles, and you get to see it from that other side of here's what I'm receiving, here's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And usually you have a coach there that says, you know, what do you think went well?
Right.
What didn't go well, right? So, yeah, those are great kinds of trainings, and I think it could be a great experience for your principals
Yep.
and assistant principals to participate in something like that. Yeah. Other questions about this one?
Not about this one in particular, but no, it's on. The job description portion, and I know that's not on here as part of the goals. My only question in regards to that is, will we continue to go through the job descriptions and just making sure that it's aligned financially? Because one of my concerns has been, we have people who are not doing the job that their job description says because of other added responsibilities on that. So just from
Right.
more of a financial standpoint and job responsibility standpoint.
So
to make sure
Matt
that
sent out
gets-
the because the human capital audit and the job description audit are
It's all
essentially
kind of similar, and that's
merging
yeah.
together. But Matt sent the cabinet last week or earlier this week a draft of the we'll call it staffing matrix. So trying to get some feedback on that before we bring it to the board in a draft form. So yeah, those goals are still being worked on. We're going to take them to completion, and you know, hopefully soon we're bringing a recommendation to the board with that staffing matrix, get the feedback, or approval.
And I figured you
So,
had, it just was not part of this. So, and I think that they're both equally important for different reasons.
yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
financially, the job descriptions and the responsibilities for this, and I think that these truly have an impact on student outcome.
right.
Because that's what we're measuring people on, and from my standpoint, that's a little higher.
Yeah.
As we continue to fine tune the goals, that's good feedback to the ones that are ongoing, like the
Just
two,
continue.
to include those as, and then ongoing ones, because we had a few on that one that were ongoing.
Yeah.
And in relation to these goals as a whole, these seem a bit more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and going back through and looking at our goals last year, we had 13 goals. And then none of them were small bites to take off. And I think that when we get spread tooth, then nothing gets done particularly well. So if we can really move some needles and put implementations into these pieces, it'll absolutely have an impact on the district. And also help the administrators actually sort of be able to stay channeled in one place, as opposed to having to be so schizophrenic every day of what's today's priority.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think our plan from here, as we go into August, which it is now August, can't believe it. We will identify on our board meeting agendas how we bring back drafts of these and continue to work on the plans, the measurables, the timelines, and some of the specifics so that we can nail them down and finalize them in our public meetings, and get those sort of ready to go. And then be thinking about through the calendar for the year of our board meetings, how we're going to schedule those updates, when those updates will happen, so that we can kind of build out our calendar for the year and it's somewhat predictable what we're going to talk about. And like Ken said, wrapping up some of those that are just about done. So, any other parting comments or feedback from the board about goals and how we go forward from here?
I've got a couple. So number one, we had, as Jill said, 13 goals last year, and some of them, we didn't finish with them or whatever. I think we should take a little bit of time at some point to either retire them, formally put them on the shelf, or decide what are we doing in continuation of those. And that could be today. It doesn't have to be today. And the other one I would say is that we had our presentations this afternoon with the superintendent search. The groups wanted to help us with that. And I can't remember which one or which ones, said it's maybe the most important decision that we're going to make. I think we need to have a goal for us as a board that is our responsibility and solely our responsibility to execute. And it may be something to do with that superintendent search. It may be something that, as we had talked at one of our other workshops about, kind of formalizing what governance model or combination of models are we using, and then try to do our best to implement that and use that. There may be, I would expect those of you that have been on the board for so much longer than I have, maybe some other good ideas, but I think it would be good for us as a board to maybe find a goal for us that is ours to execute.
Yep. Yep, I agree, Dan. That's something that we did talk about at our last workshop, and trying to come up with some examples that we can try to build a framework around for, district goals, board goals, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I do agree with the group who presented that. I think it is going to be the most important thing that we as a board do this year, hiring a new superintendent. Yep. Great. Any other, Rick?
So going back to first, I agree with what you just said, Dan. I've worked with all three of those firms. They're all three good. I'm agnostic on which one the board chooses. So I'm going to listen to the four of you, and there's different criteria we can use in picking them, but I'm okay with any of the three. I do think it would be beneficial for us in some kind of format, whether it's only one or two of us talking about it, or the board in a workshop or something like that. Having done this a few times, I think it would be valuable for me to share the mistakes that boards have made in the past.
Oh, yeah.
So, and some of the things that worked really well, because all three of these firms said that they would tailor their search to the board and the district here. But we've done some things that I think that worked really well, and we've done a few things that I think I wouldn't do again. So
Yeah,
just scheduling some kind of time for that would be good.
I think that's a great idea, and maybe once we picked the firm that we would want to move forward with, we could do that workshop with them as well, right? And have that be a part of that larger conversation. I think that's a great idea, Rick. Yep. And I do agree, Dan. I think thinking about a workshop later in the year to think about governance models and have a conversation around that. We do have WASDA coming up in November, so you will definitely have an opportunity to go to sessions at WASDA about governance models, and you can learn more there. I think I went to one last year to get some basics around that, but we can definitely have a workshop around that as well. And depending on the search firm we choose, some of them really offered a lot of that sort of after work kind of facilitation as well, which could be really, really helpful for us as we onboard a new superintendent.
Which I think will help make the new superintendent
more
more
successful.
successful
Yep.
as well. I mean, data-driven, effective boards have better outcomes for students. So it's a team effort. It's a team sport.
All right. Any other parting remarks? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.